Welcome back to another episode of Swoop. In this episode, we're going to be predicting the 2025 AFL Ladder. Let's get into it. So if there are a few things that I'm bad at with this whole AFL thing, it's the draft. Terrible at the draft. That's why I rely on Pommy a lot. He's the GOAT. And predicting the AFL Ladder. Now, going from 2023 to 2024, I don't even want to rewatch that video, but I know that my ladder not that it didn't change, that no one dropped in, no one dropped out of the 8. And I know that was ridiculous. That was a really big call. But I'm stupid. And what can you expect, right? So this ladder prediction this year is going to be definitely different to the other one, mainly because there's two quote-unquote rules that come into play when we're talking about the ladder predictions. So one of these rules is that over the last few years when there's been an 18-team competition, on average, 2.9 teams, let's round that up to 3 teams, have dropped out of the 8. So 3 teams drop out of the 8 and 3 teams go into the 8 from the bottom 10. Now, in 2024, it was Geelong, the Bulldogs, and Hawthorn going from the bottom 10 into the top 8, replacing Collingwood, Melbourne, and St Kilda. Now, that's been happening since the start of the 18-team competition. So in this ladder predictor, we're going to be dropping 3 teams out and 3 teams in because that's just the trend that this is going by. And the second rule that we're going to be sticking by is that someone from outside the top 8 will jump into the top 4. So since 2015, which is 10 years ago, one team has jumped from outside the top 8 into the top 4. We even saw it with the Pies going from 2017. Where were we sitting in 2017? Really shocking, like bottom 4, right? And then going into the top 4 and then playing off in a grand final. So we're going to stick by that as well. Now, those 2 rules have been said and done. Let's get into this ladder prediction video. So this is what the ladder looked like last year. So the top 4, we had Sydney, Port, Geelong, and the Giants. Brisbane won the premiership from 5th outside the top 4, so that hasn't happened since the Doggies won it back in 2016. And then rounding it off were Hawthorn and Carlton. Now, Carlton were only there because of percentage, and then it was the top 10 were then rounded out by the Pies, Freo, Essendon, Saints, the Suns, Melbourne, Adelaide, West Coast, North, and Richmond. Now, it starts to get a little bit tricky, right? Because we've set up those rules of 1 team from the bottom 10 jumps into the top 4, and then 3 teams from the top 8 jump out into the top 3. There are going to be some big calls that I'm going to make. And I'm not going to go through this video and say, oh, Richmond are going to win 1 game for the season. North are going to win 6 games for the season. It's just going to be where I think they finish on the ladder. And what we're going to do is we're going to go from 18 up to 1. And it's going to be very, very interesting. But again, these are my opinions. Anyway, I've talked too much shit. Let's get into it. So, 18. I think West Coast bottom spooners this year. I know there's probably a case for Richmond to be there. So I've got Richmond at 17. And I think they're interchangeable. I know Richmond have just drafted insanely. They're going to have such a young team going out there, especially round 1, when they play the Blues and stuff. It's going to be insane. They're going to have a long season, and West Coast are going to have a long season as well. And what did West Coast have? West Coast had 5 wins last year. Are they going to do better or worse? They do have a new coach, so that new coach, that sort of honeymoon period when you get a new coach. Actually, I'm gonna change it up. I'm gonna go Richmond 18th, West Coast 17th. Richmond get the number 1 pick again. There's going to be improvement from Richmond, but I don't think they win more than 4 games this season. And then West Coast, we'll just say, they win 4 or 5 games as well. Now, those 2 are pretty much locked in, and this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky. Like North Melbourne, they've got a whole year extra into their stars, but do they have what it takes to jump out of that bottom 4? Like when you look at the team that was outside of the bottom 4 was Melbourne. They had 11 games, and then Adelaide were 14th with 8 games. And can North win 8 games to jump out, or 9 games to jump out of that bottom 4? I don't really think so. I don't really think so. So unfortunately, I've got North finishing 16th this season. I do think there's going to be some improvement, but I do have them finishing 16th. And I know this is the bottom three is pretty cliche, and people and teams will move quite a bit, but I just I just don't see anyone jumping down that low. But for a bit of a change, and I know this is probably going to upset some people and stuff like that, but bottom four, rounding it out and going 15, is I've got Melbourne. Now, I know Melbourne are still a very good team. They're a premiership team. They've got premiership stars in them. But they finished, 14th last season with 11 wins. I just, especially the stuff with Petrarca and Viney and Gawn, not Viney, Clayton Oliver, and then you got Gawn stuff, and Petrarca just cracked another rib. I just don't think they get the momentum going through this year. And look, I don't really like Melbourne that much anyway, so this might be a little bit biased as well. But I don't have them coming out of the bottom four. I think they'll go 15th. I think they won't improve too much from last season, and I think they'll drop some games that they should win, and that's when their season will start derailing. Now, the thing about next year, this season, is that there's going to be at least, I reckon, 12 teams that are going to be competing for that top 8. Now, if you look at last year's ladder, Fremantle were one game away from the top 8. Collingwood were one game away from the top 8. Essendon were 2 games away. St Kilda, Gold Coast, and I guess even Melbourne were 3 games away. Now, where do you see the Adelaide Crows finishing? The Crows are a big worry for me because I think if they don't make finals, Matthew Nicks gets sacked. He might get sacked halfway through. And that's why I've got the Crows at the moment. That's where I'm going to have them. I'm going to go 14th at the moment. They were 15th last season. So I know this bottom 5 hasn't changed much since last season, but that's where I've got them. I can't see anyone really finishing below them. Like, I think Western Bulldogs are going to do well. Sydney, St Kilda, Port, Hawthorn, Giants, Gold Coast going to have to improve. So that's where I've got them at the moment. Now, 13th, I've got Essendon at 13th. I just think that Essendon just can't get it going at the moment. Essendon kind of remind me of Manchester United and what they're going through right now, where they've changed the coach, they've brought in a couple of new players. There's always this hope, but they've got the personnel, but they just can't get it right. And I think, you know what, actually, I think I've got Essendon at 14th and Adelaide at 13th. Essendon just can't get it right, and I think they'll miss out on finals again. Now, what do we got? So 12th. This is going to be hard. Now it's starting to get really hard. I probably should have done this before going live on camera. Okay. Port Adelaide. They're not going to finish as low as 12th, but remember, we've got 3 teams jumping out of the top 8 into the bottom 10. Okay. It's going to be weird. I'm going to put Port Adelaide 12th. Their Achilles rupture to Todd Marshall is going to absolutely cook them. I know they've got a couple of players in, and that will help them, but it's going to get really, really tight into that top 8, and we still got to abide by that rule of 3 teams from the top 8 going into the bottom 10. And I think Port Adelaide are going to be one of those teams. I've never really rated Port Adelaide. I know, they won 16 games last season. They finished second. They smashed Sydney, which is just incredible. They're always just up there. I don't think this is their season. I think 11, 10, and 9. This is where it's going to be judged by 1 game or 2 games. I think 11, the Giants. I think the Giants are cooked because those 2 games that they lost, so they got the double chance. They were up by 40 points in both of those games, and then they lose. How do you mentally recover from that? I don't think you do. I don't think you can mentally recover from that. And I think that's going to be hard. Um, and I think it's going to be very fucking interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they sort of bounce back because, again, like most of these teams in the bottom 10, they have the personnel, but how do you get them going again? Is it a revenge thing? Is it a redemption thing? Last year would have been their best shot at a flag, and I just don't see them pushing up that much again. So I've got Carlton at 10th, and I've said this for the last couple of months, and I don't know why I'm saying it because they are a fantastic team, right? It's hard to admit it as a Collingwood supporter, but they are a fantastic team. When they're firing, but kind of like the GWS, are they burnt by that absolute demolition by the Brisbane Lions in that first week of finals? Can they bounce back? There's a bit of an injury cloud over like Curnow. If they had gotten Dan Houston, I think that's exactly who they were missing running off that half back line. Can they be up there again? And probably, there's a lot of content creators and staff and just people who have got them in the top 4. But I think, and again, finishing 9th and 10th, I still think that's half a game or one game out of the 8. So it's not like they're going to be, 6 games worse out of the 8. But I have them finishing out of the 8 at 10th. And this will probably come back and bite me in the ass. They'll probably win the flag or something. But that's just the nature of a prediction, right? I told you I'm no good at predictions. Now, 9th, I've got St Kilda. Now, St Kilda finished 12th last season. So I do have them improving. But I just don't have them improving that much, like just going that little bit extra to get into the top 8. But again, 7, 8, 9, and 10, it's just going to be 2 games here and there, right? They're going to drop some games that they should have won. They're going to win some games that they should have lost. And it's going to be exactly like it was last season, where it's just going to be tit for tat, and it'll be the smallest of margins. So whoever I have finishing 7 and 8, plus that 9 and 10, I think they'll be very interchangeable. Now, the top 8. Oh, I didn't realize I have Gold Coast in here. You know what? Could that be the year? What did Gold Coast finish? They finished 13th, and they were 2 games out of the 8. I'm going to put Gold Coast at 8. Now, they have never played finals before. They recruited okay. They got John Noble. They got Rioli. I know Rioli's a little bit injured. They got another preseason into King. And they got Hardwick up there. Hardwick would earmark finals for them, right? Hardwick would earmark finals. The Suns lost some games that they should have won last season. Their percentage wasn't that good, so they've got to get more on the attack. So I've got them just creeping into the 8. But I'll say it again. 7, 8, 9, and 10, very, very interchangeable. Now, 7, I kind of like the Bulldogs at 7. I know they finished 6th last season, but I do like the Bulldogs at 7. I do like them as being in finals contention. I like their team so much, and the Bont deserves to keep playing finals. Hawthorn, 6th, I've got Hawthorn. Can Hawthorn replicate what they did last season? Is it a bit of a flash in the pan sort of thing? What are they looking like? They finished 7th last season. I've got them just going a little bit better. They could be on the precipice of the top 4, but I just don't think so. I think teams will start working them out like teams started working out Collingwood last year. Now, the top 5. We'll go, should we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? No, we'll keep going up. So 5 and 4, I've got Sydney at 5th because, look, Sydney are a good team. I know they've got the new coach. I know they've got Dean Cox now. So you could see that they get a boost from that, but I don't see them winning. What do they win? 17 games? I don't think they're a 17-game winning team this season. I just can't see it. But in saying that, Geelong, what did Geelong win? 15 games. Are they gonna win 15 games this season? I don't really think so either. But are Geelong gonna drop out of the top 4? They were top 4 last season. You know what? I'm gonna flip it around. This is what I'm gonna do. 6th, I've got Geelong. 5th, I've got Hawthorn. 4th, I've got Sydney. Sydney 4th, they just creep in because of that because of the Dean Cox, the new coach sort of thing, a little bit more new tactics. Hawthorn's still thereabouts, that flash in the pan sort of thing. And Geelong, because I forgot about Geelong, that they were up at the top somewhere there. I just got them dropping out, losing winning 2 less games than they did last year. So 15, yeah, they probably win 13 or 14. 14 games probably gets you in that bottom of the top 8, and then 15 plus will get you into the top 4. Now, I've got the Pies at 3rd, Fremantle at 2nd, and Brisbane 1st. We said one team comes from the top, from the bottom 10, jumps into the top 8. The top 4. We've got 2 teams coming from the bottom 10 and jumping into the top 4. I think Collingwood, and I've talked about this a lot, and this is not me being biased, because Collingwood could finish anywhere between 2nd and 6th, I feel. But the team that we have now is pretty much the 2023 Premiership team. And then you add Dan McStay in there, who looks fit and firing. You add a healthy Myercheck. You're adding Dan Houston, who is the best halfback in Australia. You're adding Harry Perryman, who is a jack of all trades. And McStay, Myercheck, Membry in that forward line. 2 more years into Nick Dacos. I know he had that plan to issue. But it's pretty much a 2023 Premiership team with a little more gusto. And you're adding Dan Houston off the halfback line and Dan McStay, who didn't play in that grand final. So that's a formidable team. If there's no injuries, we finish in top 4. Now, Fremantle, I've got 2nd. So Fremantle were 10th. I've got them guys finishing 2nd. I freaking love Fremantle. I love how they're recruited. They've gone really hard. Justin Longmuir, this is probably his final year if he doesn't make finals. They're peaking at the right time now. They kind of remind me of the Demons Premiership team from a few years ago, that COVID year, where, you've got Sarong, Brayshaw, just peaking at that right sort of age. They got Shea Bolton there as well, sorry. And I think they're going to blitz the competition, finish in the top 4. And then, of course, Brisbane Lions, I've got them first. Like, you can't really move the Premiers from first. I know Joe Danaher is going to be a big loss for them. Where do their goals sort of come from? Is Sam Day that guy? But they bring in Levi Ashcroft, who is the best kid in the country. They pick him up at pick 5 or something. Plays with Will, who is another best kid in the whole entire country. So I don't see them regressing too much. But again, that top 4 could be pretty much that top 6 could be here and there. I think we're going to have the closest season that we've had. I know last year was very close. I feel like this season is going to be very closer, because that top 10, there's going to be margins in it. It's going to be Collingwood beat Giants by 2 points here, or the Western Bulldogs lost by 1 point here. Carlton lost by 3 points in these 2 games where they should have won. It was a kick after the siren. So it's going to be margins. So any of those top 10 teams can be interchangeable, and I would love to see this. We'll look at it midway through the season. We'll look at this ladder, compare it to the ladder at the halfway point. But let me know your thoughts. What do you rate this ladder? I don't know. I feel very weird about it. I don't know. I kind of give this a C minus maybe. But that's my ladder for now. Let me know your thoughts down below. What are your ladder? What changes would you make? But until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets. And until next time, double shackers. I'll swoop you later.